Good morning, everyone. We are here for the quarterly Know Your Law, Know Your Rights event. And I'm Pastor Darcy. I am one of the co-pastors of Park Avenue Baptist Church. And I want to introduce my co-pastor, my collaborator, and the creative mind behind this event, Pastor Kianna Chennault. Pastor Kianna, will you take over?
Yes, good morning. Good morning. How y'all doing this morning? Would like to each and every one for joining us this to another event of Know the Law, Know Your Rights. And this year is Know Your Taxes as well. So we welcome each and every one of you all this morning. This is our 5th year doing this, and I'm so excited to keep it going. We have some familiar faces back this morning and some great topics that we're going to be speaking on that are educational and will help each and every one of us as we move along and go about our daily life. But let us start this morning with a opening prayer. God, we thank you for allowing us together to learn. We thank you for the individuals who have give back. We ask that this time and this meeting be a blessing, and may it help someone as we go about our daily lives. It's in Jesus' name we all pray. Amen. Amen. Once again, this is a great day to be here, and I want to introduce the people who will be on the panel this morning. First of all, I want to introduce the compadre who we sat together years ago and said, let's do something like this, just to educate the masses. And I would like to introduce Mr. Chris Campbell. As he pops up on the screen, let him introduce himself as well.
Good morning. I'm Chris Campbell. I'm an attorney here in Metro Atlanta. I'm primarily criminal defense and personal injury with the Wade Bradley Campbell firm in Marietta.
Definitely. Glad to have you here, brother. And we have wonderful another attorney, is Kianna Chennault.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Kianna Chennault, and I'm also an attorney here in the Atlanta metro area. I'm formerly a prosecutor. I resigned at the end of 2020. Just with everything going on, I just couldn't do it anymore. And so now I'm working with a nonprofit that I established with 2 other attorneys called Global Community Mothers in Law and Know-How. And we are fighting for social justices, namely freedom against police brutality, and we're also advocating against prosecutorial misconduct. I also run a business where I teach Black business how to themselves legally in the market. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, sis. I'm happy to have you here again with us. And then we have Mr. Terrence Bradley.
Good morning. I'm Terrence Bradley. I'm the law partner to Christopher Campbell and one of the partners at Wade Bradley and Campbell. I'm excited to be here, and I enjoyed it last year, and I know I'm going to enjoy it this year. I hate Kianna left the DA's office. I mean, she was giving us great perspective, but I know what she's doing is even better. I know that that's not correct English, but I know it's even better. And so congratulations on that.
Definitely. Thank you. Good to have you, brother. Good to see you again this year. And then finally, but not least, our tax for the day, Mr. Gregory Digsby, my tax guy.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Digsby.
How you doing, sir?
Doing fine, everyone. I have a little firm, G&D consulting firm, where I do some taxes, help people out with some of their business stuff. Also do some IT work on the side, but today is just going to be talking about taxes and investments. So, I'm happy to be here with everybody. So please, any questions you have, please chime in, ask me any questions. I will try to answer them. If not, I will get people's email address and I will provide answers later if I cannot answer them on the spot.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. So, with that being said, let's get started. We're going to be talking about taxes and investments. And I want to start off by saying that taxes and investments are We have a lot to cover today, and we're going to get to it. Pastor Darcy, if we can just put everybody up on the screen. We're kind of going to have our flow right here of what we're going to be talking about today. And the first topic that we're going to be talking about is Fourth Amendment protection, premise liability, qualified immunity. First topic is going to be spoken on by Attorney Kianna Chennault and the other lawyers. We're going to chime in as well. And then we're going to talk about, as I stated, premise liability, qualified immunity, and then some of what's going on around Atlanta. I mean, we've seen a crime uptick in Atlanta, and just not Atlanta, just the nation in general during this time of COVID. I mean, we just want to talk about some options and how we can help, how we can be aware and what we can do here in Atlanta. And then we'll flow into our tax topics. There are a lot of changes to tax laws this year, to your personal taxes and your business taxes. And we're going to talk about the structures, which kind of business should you create that, is most efficient for your tax liability and how that works. And I have some knowledge myself, but I definitely want to have my guy who has saved me year in, year and out, Gregory Digsby, to speak this morning. But definitely, let's get started. Let's jump right into it. As we bring everyone to the screen this morning, have Kianna Chennault start off with Fourth Amendment and why that's important to us.
Hello again. I wanted to start off talking about the Fourth Amendment because in my work as a prosecutor and currently in my work with my nonprofit, I just noticed a gap between our community and knowledge of constitutional rights. And I think we definitely have to do a better job of teaching our children that their constitutional rights, just in general, it should be part of public school education. Is not. But that's where we come in as leaders to fill in those gaps. And so the Fourth Amendment basically protects people from unreasonable searches and seizures of their person and their property. And so unreasonable is actually a legal term. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more. Your person and your property, that's pretty self-explanatory. So your body, your car, your home, your bags, all those things are protected from being searched unreasonably. So when we get to what's unreasonable, that's a legal term, like I said, so that means it depends, right? That's a lawyer's favorite answer, is that it depends. And so a search is per se unreasonable, which means it's automatically unreasonable if there is no warrant attached to that search. However, there are several exceptions to that rule, and we can kind of get into some of those exceptions, but most of the time when you're being searched by a police officer or stopped by a police officer, there is no warrant. And so those exceptions are actually very important. But I want to talk a little bit about the tiers of police encounters, because depending on what tier you're in, that will dictate the level of search that may be involved. And so we have tier 1. Those are our citizen encounters. And so that's basically like if a police officer comes up to you on the street and say, "Hey, how you doing? What brings you to Broad Street today?" He or she just might be trying to make conversation. That's the citizen encounter. So at that point, the person being questioned by the officer, the citizen, will be allowed to leave. You're free to leave. You can answer the question, you cannot answer the question, but you will be free to leave. So that's tier 1. Tier 2 is a little more aggravated. So the officer may have reasonable suspicion that a crime is occurring or is about to occur. At that point, the officer can actually detain you briefly and ask you questions. So this term, or the Cinemark case for this tier, is Terry versus Ohio. And in that case, there was a man who was standing outside of a bank. That bank had been robbed several times, and the officer thought that the man might have been casing the bank. And so he stopped the man. He said, "Are you going inside?" I don't remember the case word by word, but he basically asked some questions, to ascertain why he was there. And so if an officer has articulable reasonable suspicion that a crime has occurred or is about to occur, then he can briefly detain you. And brief is also, it depends, right? It depends on the situation. But he can briefly detain you while he investigates. And I'm just saying he because it's easier, but of course we have male and female officers. And so that's level 2. So if he does an investigation and he realizes that there's no crime occurring, that you're at a legal place where you have a legal right to be, then you're free to go. The problem, and that can be a problem too, because you may feel like your rights are being violated, that articulable suspicion may be based on race, and we can talk about that a little bit more. But usually at that point, you're able to walk away after the investigation. The issue really comes at tier 3, and that's when the officer has probable cause. And at that point, the officer can detain you and also do a more intensive search. So at tier 2, the officer can only pat you down, do a Terry frisk, pat you down for weapons, for his safety. If he's stopping you and you're in a car, he can, look around in your car just to see for any obvious weapons. He can also look in an area that's in your arm's reach just to see if there's any weapons. But other than that, that's the most he can do for tier 2. Once you get to tier 3, an officer can actually place you under arrest, search your car, thorough search of your body, and up into arrest, and actually take you to jail. And so that's when the officer has probable cause, which means he has a stronger reason to believe that a crime has been committed. In my time as a prosecutor, I saw the smell of marijuana was one of the main reasons that an officer was able to gain probable cause. And so if you're driving down the street or you're sitting in the parking lot and the officer smells marijuana coming from your car, then he automatically has probable cause to search your car. And that can be a problem, right? And so these tiers you can kind of move in between those tiers quickly, or you can jump straight into a tier 3 if the officer has seen or smelled you committing a crime. And so I just wanted to give that brief overview. Did you say you have a question, Henry, for me? I see something in the comments.
Yeah, you kind of touched on the topic. A lot of my young boys and young people that I deal with, they like marijuana. No judgment on that side of it. But I always tell them, hey, don't smoke in your car. And I know Terrence and us and Chris and us, we talked about this last time, but that's one probable cause that will get you stuck every time. So I definitely, you touched on it. Yeah. And also,
Yes.
a lot of us, this is as a question and you can answer. A lot of us, a cop can just come up to you and say, hey, let me see your ID. And a lot of us may think that we don't have to show them identification. What is the rule and law around that? That when a cop comes up and just let me see your identification, do they have to have probable cause for that?
They do not have to have probable cause. Because the law states that you are supposed to have your ID at all times, something to identify yourself. So whether it's a driver's license, a state issue ID, I believe when you're 16 or 17, you're required to walk around with an ID. So an officer is allowed to ask you, can stop you and ask you for your ID. And you have to give it to them. If you give them a false name and false birthday, then that's a misdemeanor. So again, that's probable cause. I've seen that a lot too. I stopped this person to ask them for their name. I looked it up. That person didn't exist. Now he has probable cause. Now he can search you. Oh, and then I found a gun. Now you have a felony. So yeah, these things can escalate so quickly.
This is a question for Chris or Terrence. So if you don't have an ID in that situation, then y'all are defense attorneys. And what then can the policeman do? What can you do? Let's just say you forgot your wallet at home. Give them the correct name, and what happens?
You can always give them your name, your date of birth. If you have your license number, you can say, well, this is my license number. But Kianna is absolutely right. What happens at that point, though, is it goes from being, hey, tier 1/tier 2 to now, he's like, oh, well, you don't have your ID. You're supposed to have this ID. And, I'm going to write you a ticket for this. And then next thing you know, it's like, oh, can I search you? And it's not even, can I search you? He starts to search you, and so to answer that is you try to be as truthful as you can. And that's the problem that we have in our community. Number one, we don't want to get the police anything, period. I don't care if we don't have a warrant. I don't care if they stop me. A police officer can come to my front door right now, and I'm like, what are you doing here? Why are you at my door? And I know I haven't done anything wrong, but that's how we are in our community. But they don't understand that. That whole, when you talk about like systemic racism and things like that, the reverse side of that is how we feel. See, how it's made us feel to have even an interaction with the police. Because just to be honest with you, different races, Caucasian, oh man, they buddy, they taking milk and cookies to the police department. They this, that, and that. We don't have that interaction. We have the interaction on the other side. We're like, nah, we don't want to talk to the police at all. We don't want to give you an ID. I don't have to give you an ID. And I tell plenty of kids or people, period, that yes, you do. You have to give your ID. So give the ID. One of the things, I don't know if everybody saw the movie American Skin. It is excellent. It is an excellent, excellent film. And one portion of that film that really touched me, and I can remember this like it was yesterday. I was in my evidence class, learning law. My evidence professor tells me that, or she's telling the class that, hey, if you're the passenger in a car, and you're pulled over, you don't have to say anything to the police officer, which you say, okay, all right. And she says, well, you can open the door and you can walk away. I said, what? Now I'm one of the only black, men in the class, and I look around and I said, you saying what? I said, that's not true. I said, in my community, you can't do that, but in like American Skin, the young boy, and I don't want to tell the movie if people haven't seen the movie, but one portion of that is he's learning his rights, his civil rights. He's learning that with a friend of his that he's learned in his class coming from his school, right? And this 14-year-old boy is telling another 14-year-old boy. So like I said, without telling the movie, the one 14-year-old boy, and I know I'm jumping off topic, but it's really, really good. I'm going to get to it. The one 14-year-old boy learned from his teacher, and now see, this 14-year-old boy went to a private school. He went to like an all-white private school that really looked like a college. His teacher taught him, hey, you don't have to do this with the police. You don't have to give your ID. You can walk away. You can this, that, and the other. And the other young man who's 14 is saying, man, he goes to public school, and he goes to public school like in Watts. And he says, man, you've been going to that private school way too long. That's not how it happens out here. The dad hears this conversation and comes in, and he tells his kid, he says, listen, I don't care what they're teaching you at this school. That might be right. And what they're teaching you is the law. But it ain't the law for black people. And it ain't the law for brown people. And he said that. And he said it just like that. He said, that's not the law for black people. That's not the law for brown people. And unfortunately, that is 100% true. Whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer, you're an engineer, you still black at the end of the day. Chris will tell you how many times we get professional individuals to say how their treatment was when they interacted with a cop. Or my own interaction with the cop when he pulled me over for being black driving a Range Rover, and he pulls me, and I think I said this the last time because I remember it. Everybody remembers that experience. I remember coming from my office on Windy Hill. I get past the Papados, Henry. The guy pulls me over. We go into a gas station. He's telling, he comes up, question, asks for my ID. I give it to him. He's asking me, simple questions, and I'm not answering them because I don't have to answer. Where you coming from? That's none of your business. Where I'm coming from. Where you coming from? Now, I'm not saying everybody need to do that. I'm not, but I knew my right, and I'm not going to sit here and have, this pity pat talk with you because you pulled me over while I was black. And I know he did, and he knew he did. And he pulled me over because I was black in a Range Rover. And he finally got to, I'm like, why'd you pull me over? And he says, man, you look familiar. And I said, well, I should, we were on the stand and Judge Robinson about a month ago. He said, man, I knew you were a lawyer. Yeah. Oh, man, you can go on your way. No, why you pull me over? That same guy was fired from that Viper unit. He was fired from the Viper unit, but here's the sheriff's department hired him, right? He was fired. Now, he wasn't fired behind what he did to me, but he was fired behind some other things, only for another agency to go and hire him. That's the problem that we have.
So I mean, I think you speak to some important topics, man, and how policing looks different in different neighborhoods. So it's good to know the law, it's good to know your rights, but I think the issue is, when does that come into play, and is it the same in every interaction? And I think,
hey, go home. Your main objective is to get home. Don't fight, don't struggle. If they're gonna arrest you, let's fight it on the other end. Let Chris and I, fight Kianna and say, hey, it was wrong. I mean, that's what we got to do. I got a case right now, and I'm not going to give any particulars. They pulled this guy over, and on the side of the road, they said, oh, we found a little shape, right? And they arrested him. But on the side of that road, they searched this man, right? All the way down to his socks, Kianna. All the way down to his socks. That's where they found a crack rock, in the sock. On the side of the road? Really?
Yeah. It speaks to a lot of issues. And I want to ask this question as well. And you bring up a good topic and how this relates to the Fourth Amendment. So when a cop pulls you over, they ask for your ID. Then at that point, do they have to communicate why they pulled you over? And if they don't give you a reason, then can you leave?
You can never leave, brother. I mean, Kianna, you want to chime in on that? But no, I'm going to tell you, you can't leave until he tells you you're going to leave. Listen, even with this tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, that's these are legal terms, right? But that officer is probably going to say, and Kianna will probably shake her head to this, they're going to always say, hey, well, I started at a tier 1, but then I had reasonable cause. So it quickly escalated to a tier 3. It ain't really started no tier 1. Because at tier 1, you're free to go. At tier 1, you don't have to talk to him. At tier 1, if he says, hey, you got a minute? No, I don't. I'm going to keep on moving. But you keep moving, they're going to keep coming after you. Am I right, Kianna?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then depending on how you're moving, right, it's so easy to violate the law. If you walking, if you jaywalk, then you committed a crime.
If you're in a high crime area.
Yeah. That's a crime. If you riding a bicycle, you're not in the bike lane, then that's a crime. So depending on how you're moving to get away, if you're driving, if you don't use your signal or you follow too close, that's a crime. And so it's very easy to jump. Like Terrence says, very easy to jump from that 1 to 2 to 3. If they want to stop you, they will find a reason why. And I think you made such a good point, Henry, that the law is one thing, but how it's applied is a whole nother thing. And that's what I tell people too. Get home, let us battle it out, in court, let us propose new legislation. But get home. The guy who was killed last year, True is his last name. I can't think of his first name. But he was killed in Cobb County. And the DA just announced last Thursday that there will be no charges brought against that officer. Well, this is a young man who got out of the car and ran away. He was running away from police. But because he had a gun in his hand, the law says that you can use deadly force against a fleeing felon who has a gun. And so they shot this young man in the back, killed him. He was running away, but the officer will not face any charges. And so we have got to, like Terrence said, do not run. It may be the law, it may, well, that's not the law because he had a gun, but don't run. The law may be unfair, but still we have to comply with it so that you're not giving the officer a reason to use deadly force against you. And so we have a young man, 17 years old, shot dead, and there will likely be no justice for his family unless there's justice in the civil courts, which hopefully there will be. But But yeah, we've got to be responsible as a people as well. Like, we want to hold officers accountable, but we have to be responsible too. Is it fair? No. But is it reality? Yes. So let's be responsible and realize what the reality is so that we can get home to our families.
Yeah,
Okay.
I totally agree on
Yeah.
that. And talking about that Truett case, it's very sad, because I living in Cobb, working in Cobb, having the relationship that I have with DA's office and some officers, it's just a sad situation. But we got this forum is the reason why, this is the reason up on a Saturday morning doing this is to educate our kids. Listen, no matter what you did wrong, it wasn't worth losing your life over. You see what I'm saying? Hey, even if you stole a car and you have to go do a year or two, it's better than being in dead in a morgue, being killed. And even him jumping out the car and having to go. Kianna was so right. And that's just a hard case to really dissect. He jumped out the car. You see the gun. He has a gun, but he ain't using a deadly force against the officer. And what kills me is how other people are treated differently when they have guns or other instrumentalities that are considered to be dangerous, and they make it home. They can blow up churches, burn them down. They can do all of this. It says, what about cops knocking on your door? Are you required to show your ID? To show your ID, them knocking on your door, I mean, they can ask if so-and-so is there. And at that particular, if you say no and they don't know who you are, they're going to ask for ID from you. But, I tell people, don't open the door for the, well, I mean, I'm bad. I'm just saying I'm bad. I can get ignorant sometimes. Yeah, I got a law degree, but I'm black. I've been black all my life. If the cop is at my door, you got a warrant. What you here for? What are you doing? Can I come in? No, you can't. You can't come across my threshold. You can stay on that side, and I'm gonna stay on this side unless you have a warrant for me or a warrant to come into my house. You ain't gonna be looking. You ain't gonna be. Because that's how they get you. And I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just too real. But the reality of it is they want to cross that threshold to see if they smell something, to see if they see something in their see if they can see something on the table. Because that's all it takes is one little thing. Oh, I see some marijuana on the table. Man, that's oregano. What you talking about? I was just cooking. But to them, that's marijuana. And then from there, oh no, it was an exigent circumstance because it was marijuana. He was gonna flush it. And that's how they get in your house. So to answer the person's question, do you have to show them an ID? You always have to show an ID. You do, whether they come to your door or not, because if they're looking for someone and you open the door, they don't know if you're that person or not. But they can't come in your house without a warrant. They can't pull you outside without a warrant. You keep them on the other side of that threshold and tell them that they don't they can't come in.
Yeah, I'm gonna just say don't open the door. Like I'm real passionate about Fourth Amendment when it comes to your house. Like, police come to your house. If my kid's okay, I didn't call you. I don't need you. I'm not answering the door. Because once you open the door, they're gonna put their foot inside the door and they're gonna be trying to find a way to get in. And once the door open, they're not closing the door. They'll have the door open until they go get a warrant. See it happen all the time. So unless something going on, it's a fire outside, or you got kids outside playing, if everything's okay at home, don't answer that door for nothing. Unless they got a warrant.
Yeah.
I'd be like Smokey. I'll talk to you through a window.
Yeah, that's it. Like through a window. Just like on Power when Tommy used to be like, hey, I ain't see nothing, I ain't say nothing, so it's nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I had an officer come to my door once, and I did open the door, but I didn't open the screen door. So he's like, is everything okay? I'm like, we're fine. I think we were just kind of being loud, it's like a family gathering. But I get very upset too when they approach my home. And that leads me to my next point, which is so important. we have the highest form of protection under the Fourth Amendment in our own property. And we don't own property, as a community, we don't own enough. We're living in apartments. We're sharing rooms, 8 people to a house. So if you get into that, I'm looking for this person, right? Well, if that's your home, you're likely not having a whole bunch of people in your house, right? And so, but if you have like a boarding home, a lot of people in our community live in a boarding home. And so you may have 10 people in that home, and that gives the officers more of a reason to knock on your door. And so we have got to get stable as a community. We've got to own homes. If you're in an apartment, the officer still has a legal right to be on those public spaces. So if it's a building, if it's an apartment building, those hallways are public spaces. The gyms, all the facilities open to everybody, it's all public spaces. And so the officer has a right to be there. So if you're even in your apartment smoking marijuana and they smell it outside the door, then they have a right to bring a dog to sniff that hallway. Oh, the dog is alerting on this apartment, then they can go get a warrant and come in your house. And so as we go down from home ownership, we have less and less protection. So as you can imagine, being on the street, unfortunately, a lot of our people spend a lot of time on the street, whether it's just hanging out. Unfortunately, we have a huge homelessness issue. Whatever your reason is for being on the street, you have the lowest level of protection under the Fourth Amendment on the street, going all the way up into home ownership. And so we've got to own property. If you think about a car, a lot of our people will be on public transportation. You don't have as much protection on public transportation as you have in your own car. You don't have as much protection walking on the street as you have in your own car. And so we've got to really put ourselves in a better position financially, so we're not over police. And we're really, our Fourth Amendment rights are tied to our social economic status, and they're not going to say that, but that's how it's in practice. Your Fourth Amendment rights are absolutely tied to how much money you have. And it's not right and it's not fair, but that's the reality.
One question I have to ask now, and I'm gonna put it to Kianna for myself, and just from the prosecutor standpoint, when you would see stuff like that came across your desk, number one, how did it make you feel? And number two, I guess, how did you do your job when you blatantly saw, before you can even read the report, you knew what the report was going to say, because that's how they're trained. And so how did that affect you being a Black, because now you've left the DA's office, and now you working for the people, trying to educate people on the rights, really. I mean, so to be there and to see that and to be going through that, number one, how did it make you feel? And then how did you do your job? Like, how did you call out some of the cops? I mean, or did you just try to, there are ways to handle cases, people out there, whether you put it down, whether no prosecutor really wants to go at a cop, because this is a person that you got to deal with on a regular basis. But how did you handle stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. It was hard. I'm going to start with your last question with the officers. I think maybe like 2 cops I called out one time because they pulled over, of course, privately, not like on a stand or anything like that, but we had a motion to suppress hearing. They pulled over the defendant for having like drive out tags on his car. I think it was a nice car, like a Mercedes or something like that. But their argument was that it was a paper tag and it didn't look like a real, like, temporary tag. And so they pulled him over. It looked like it was something handwritten or something like that. And so I was like, okay, well, why else? It was just like real shaky. The reasonable suspicion just was really shaky. The law is clear that, race alone, you can't stop somebody. Just driving a nice car, being out at night, you cannot stop somebody just with that. And so I said, well, this is what the law is. So we had the probable cause hearing, and I'm like, well, this is what the law is. And 2 cops flat out told me, well, that's not what we do. Like, we don't follow that law. If we see a car that looks suspicious, with different drive-out tags. And I know in Atlanta we have a huge issue with people switching tags and getting dealer tags, buying them and putting them on cars and stuff like that. But if they see those cars, whether or not it's any other reason to stop them, they will just blatantly stop them. And I'm like, look, I don't think this is enough under the law. And we ended up losing that motion to suppress hearing. The state did. The judge sided with the defendant. Said it wasn't enough. That wasn't enough. Just having a paper tag alone wasn't enough to pull someone over. And so I did talk to them about that, but you have to do it in a way that they're not offended, because like you said, Terrence, you have to keep working with these officers. You have to work with their department. You have to call them to the stand. You want them to come, right? A lot of our cases are built on officers actually showing up. So if you get a reputation, like, oh, she did, she said that, they might be sick that day. You know what I mean? When you need them to come. And so it's a very delicate balance. You have to be really, really careful. Now, I will say that wasn't most officers. Most officers I engaged with, they wanted to do the right thing. They wanted to understand the law or where they went wrong. So if they had that type of attitude, then it was very easy to talk to them about issues. A lot of times they'll be missing evidence for their cases. But as far as how I handle cases, like I had cases where literally I think I had a case that was so crazy. This guy was pushing his car. I think it broke down. Police stopped him to help him, and he had a gun on him. And he ended up arrested for having a gun, and he was a convicted felon, of course. And so, cases like that, I would they're tough, because if this person is already a convicted felon, I can't give him PTI, which is pre-trial intervention, because he's already a felon. Legally, he's not supposed to have a gun. So it's like, okay, I can't really drop this charge because you weren't supposed to have a gun. So in those instances, if I couldn't drop the case, then I would just try to offer the lowest sentence possible, probation for a year or something like that, even though that's not good either, because then you have probation fees and people can't pay them. And so it's a mess. But that's part of the reason why I left the office, was because I realized I was putting people in these precarious situations, and really the criminal justice system is a cycle, and it's designed to keep Black and brown people in that cycle. It's a lot of money involved. It's a lot of control involved. There's people profiting a lot. There's people working in prison for free or making 10 cents an hour, and so this is a big business. And so it's designed to keep people inside of the system, and that's exactly what it does. And so I decided, if I really wanted to make change, I had to make change from outside the system, because while you are a prosecutor, you can only enforce the laws as they are. That's it. And so that wasn't enough for me.
So something that she touched on, and I know we got to get on to another topic, so we will do that. But probation is a trap. Probation is a trap. I'm not just saying that. I used to be a probation officer, so and I did it for almost 5 years. I was a probation officer. It is indeed a trap. When you have to pay a probation fee of $39 a month to a probation officer, that is a trap. Not to mention that's just a fee while you're on probation, but then you have to pay your probation fine. So say for instance, you get caught with a drug charge, right? Do you know that when you get caught with a drug charge in Georgia, your fine doubles? So if the judge tells you that your fine is $1,000, by the time they add the surcharges, your fine is actually $2,000, because $750 goes to the fight against drugs. If you look at the breakdown, for a drug charge, and I'm just using drug charge alone, your fine will double on a drug charge. So if he tells you $1,000, be prepared to pay $2,000. Now that's not the same on a battery. That's not the same on a shoplifting. Now you will have some surcharges, but it won't be double. So you imagine you go in, and you say, and the judge is talking to you, and they tell you it's $1,000 fine, but then the little clerk says, okay, you have to pay that at a rate of $75 a month. So now you're coming out of your pocket at almost $120 a month just from that. Oh, but by the way, I need you to get an alcohol and drug evaluation. Okay, well, darling, how much does that cost? Been doing this a long time. Most of them cost $150 to $200. Okay, so man, now I got to do that. I got to pay that. Well, then you say, okay, well, prosecutors love, and I'm not saying this to Kim, they love to say, well, they can do community service free. Well, but how am I going to do community service when I got to pay $120, $180? I barely got time. I can't really go to work. You see what I'm saying? And so probation is a trap. Now, don't get me wrong. If that's your only option, then you take that. But what I try to do for my clients, and what we try to do, Chris and I, for our clients, is number one, if I know that somebody is taking probation, I'm trying to go in with everything complete. Okay. And number two, if everything is complete, then I'm trying to ask the judge for an early termination clause, or for them not to go on probation. Now, if you do something and you get in a couple of years, they're going to, put you on probation, and the only thing that you probably have to pay is the probation fee, maybe. But probation is a trap.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm glad you touched on that. I mean, that's an important topic. And a lot of people don't know that information. So, I mean, jump in. If any knowledge you all want to give as a sidebar, that's fine with me. The more education we can spread, the better. And definitely just moving on to the next topic, because I want to make sure that we have time to talk about taxes. We've got about 2 hours we're going to work in today, but I know Terrence and Chris wanted to talk about, and Chris, you can head this up, about premise liability and how that is important.
Oh yeah, sure. So we wanted to touch on the topic of premises liability for this session because of
mainly you see a lot of car break-ins nowadays in the Atlanta area. Car break-ins, auto theft is running rampant, especially in Buckhead. You also see people are getting a lot of armed robberies, and that's been going on in Atlanta for years. So how premise liability works is essentially if you're a victim of a crime, like say you get somebody robs you in the parking lot, or you get shot somewhere, you're innocent bystander. If you're at a location or a facility that has been put on notice that they're in a high crime area, or they've had those type of incidents occur, if they don't have significant security there or protections, they're liable. So if you're injured or we have some cases where people are shot and killed at certain venues, apartment complexes, or even lounges or clubs. If those facilities have been put on notice, if they know that their location, their venue attracts a certain criminal element, they better have significant security, and not top flight security of America. That's not going to get it. You're going to have mandated law enforcement officers on the scene to help protect those venues. So it's very common. A lot of people don't know about it. You have people who've been victimized, families been victimized at certain places, and they missing out on making these venues pay. So so Chris, I know you talked about apartment complexes and a lot of crime happen in those spaces. But what about like social events as well? What if you're going to a concert? What if you're going to a club and they're not in a high crime area? What then are the repercussions, or if any? Now that it kind of becomes more of a gray area depending on the event. That's kind of where lawyers we have to make certain arguments that they should have known that certain things will happen depending on who's performing, what venue it is. That's when it kind of gets into more of a gray area when you're talking about like social gatherings. Like we had one case we were looking at with a former client of ours was shot and killed in Atlanta, where it was like a bunch of like sports cars, a bunch of young kids hanging out, racing cars. We're like, how are they able to just hang out and race cars, in Edgewood? Who's allowing this? But they didn't have a permit or anything. But it's kind of something like to look at with the city, like why all these kids able to congregate here with these cars and race cars in the track
that criminal element. So those type of cases is more of a gray area because you can't really say, it wasn't a actual facility or event. But when you have, things like at a club, lounge, somewhere where they've had prior incidents and they've been put on notice, and they just have, Craig and top flight security out there, and something goes on, then you have grounds. It's pretty much clear where they're liable for not having adequate security.
And then, and like Chris says, some things are inherently dangerous, so, and some people are going to be liable for that, so if you go to a club and the bouncer is putting you out the club and he slams you on the ground, well, the owner of the club may be liable for the bouncer's actions because that's what he hired him to do, kind of, but if he take it too far and now he's thrown your shoulder out and you have to have surgery, then you can probably go after that, club for, his negligent entrustment of this not whether it's an officer or whether it's a security guard, there. But the key component to a lot of that is prior acts, right? So you can like right now, what would be huge or what is huge? All the shootings that happened at Lenox Mall. All those shootings at Lenox Mall. That after that first shooting, Lenox Mall was put on notice that, hey, we got to have better security. We got to have better. We maybe need to put cameras out here. We got to do better. But as we all know, you've had like 4 or 5 shootings, and this past year alone, you're like, man, I don't even want to go to Lenox Mall anymore. But so Lenox is on notice for something like that. So someone getting shot and killed at Lenox, yeah, that's going to be a pretty good case. And I'm not. And listen, what Chris is not telling you is these verdicts that are coming out in these cases are like $13 million, $17 million, $20 million, and they're paying it. A couple of them went to verdict, and then after you get a couple verdicts, then at that point it becomes, hey, can we settle for this amount? And so premise liability is huge because we have, you have that one guy in the neighborhood who terrorizes everybody, and the apartment complex been telling the apartment manager he's bad, and they know he's bad, and the cops have been over here to see him, but yet nothing has been done. Then guess what? That apartment complex probably is going to be on hook, or at least their insurance company is going to be on the hook, and that's the long and short of it. I mean, and the better case. I mean, you hate to say the better cases because somebody is injured, somebody is hurt. You never want that, but the cases are, of course, when you have multiple incidents that happen at a place and they haven't done anything at all. They don't put up a gate. They don't put up lights. They don't put a security guard to work through, and so we're just talking about an apartment complex, but you can imagine, being at, like I said, if it's Club Applebee's and everybody know that, oh, this Applebee's and we going to this Applebee's and they got the music playing and it's almost like it's a club. That type of thing, because that's how it used to be over there on Rockbridge. That Applebee's off of Rockbridge used to be jumping back in the day. It was and so you knew, hey, I'm going to Applebee's, but you were really like you were going to a club almost. And then stuff would pop off, something will pop off, and the next thing you know, someone's dead or someone's injured, and you don't have to get killed in order to have a claim. You can the injury alone. If everybody rush out and somebody push you down and you break your leg, hey, they're liable. You might not get $17 million, but you might get something.
Yeah. And I know you touched on the topic with the apartment and whatnot, but a lot of our apartment complexes don't have like security. What's sufficient? Is it a gate? You said a gate. You said a light. I mean, like, if we look at it, as in whole, a lot of them are not, to that level of security where they wouldn't be liable. So why don't we see? And obviously, we don't see a lot of these cases because people don't know. But I mean, what is a sufficient level of security?
There are a lot of cases that are out there that get settled, brother, that you just don't hear about. Like I don't know who's represented, but you remember about a month. No, it was probably a little bit longer than a month. It's probably about December, maybe. It was the young man that was at an apartment complex. He got carjacked. He happened to be a teacher. And I think he was a teacher. He was carjacked.
I saw that. Cobb County.
You probably won't hear about that case at all, but I guarantee you, he pulled into that apartment complex. These folks pulled up behind him, however they did. Somebody's gonna be liable if there were other instances of that. If they can prove that they were on notice. You see what I'm saying? But it's cases like that you ain't gonna hear about. But you know what? There was a settlement and it was done. Or another case, just prime example. You remember the cases where the Uber drivers a couple years ago, the Uber driver raped a young woman, right? Raped a young woman, and the Uber driver. It may have happened in Cobb, may have happened in Fulton, one or the other. I remember being with an attorney, and we were out, and he says, "Man, I gotta leave." And I said, "Okay, man. Well, you have a good night." He says, "Yeah, I'm meeting Willie Gary. We're gonna settle with Uber in the morning on that case." Nobody, but guess what? They ain't never hit the media, right? Ain't never hit the media. But Uber paid. Now I don't know what Uber paid, but I guess if we call Chris Stewart or something, he might be able to tell us. But but Uber paid them. And so it's a lot of cases like that you don't hear about. I mean, you hear about it initially, but you don't hear about the payday. And I'm not saying that you won't, that you're just after a payday. So please don't think that's what I'm saying. But what we are saying is, hey, somebody should be held liable when these crimes occur, and if you can hold them liable, you should hold them liable.
Okay.
Yeah, like prior incidents could be like burglaries, car break-ins, car thefts in apartment complexes. And in my old apartment complex off Barrett, we had a couple of break-ins, and they hired an actual Cobb PD officer that I knew. He would just be walking around the buildings, and they had to pay him. And it's kind of they take on risk. They either they'll pay the money, and have actual officers on the premises that are actually like patrolling, or they won't. They'll take the risk. They'll leave gates inoperative for long periods of time. They know those gates should be working, but they'll have the gates not working for long periods of time, and then something will happen, and people just don't have that knowledge that, hey, your apartment complex is on the hook for that. So things will happen, and it may not get reported, and people don't know to go talk to an attorney to look into these things. So we just want people to know, hey, when you're an invitee or you go on somebody else's premises, if something happens, they may be liable.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is all like important information, because this is a lot of stuff that I personally did not know myself, and I think, and I want to go to the topic, and you touched on this a little bit, Chris, about because a lot of robberies are going on around Atlanta, and a lot of them are, in the Buckhead area, what they put on the news or whatnot, because that's where the money's at. But there's a lot of robberies, there are a lot of break-ins, and obviously people are getting killed as well, in these areas. So Atlanta, as far as the whole, and you three are attorneys, and we've seen this uptick in crime during this time. Far as the community, far as us, and in our community, we've been dealing with this a long time. What are some of the steps you think we have to take as a community to make it safer for our kids and for our neighborhoods? What laws do you think need to change in that regard, as far as policing and things of that nature?
Well, two things. We knew that this was going to happen. We knew that this was going to happen because I told Chris, and I think I may even told you here when the pandemic first started. I said, man, listen, when the money runs out, people gonna do whatever they got to do to survive. And so now I'm not saying that they were right for doing it. I'm not advocating. I'm not any of that. But we the three of us had a conversation, and it was at the beginning of the pandemic. I said, man, y'all got to be careful, and y'all gotta you gotta get a gun yourself, because when the average, the 4 or 5 of us on here may still be able to go to a job and be able to work. But what about Ray Ray and Pookie them who still had jobs, but yet now their job is gone because they may have been working at McDonald's, but he went robbing when he was at McDonald's. But now that he ain't got no money because the McDonald's closed, and I'm just using that as an example, now they resort to robbing. But what? There's not a whole lot we can do except for try to be safe, try to know your surroundings, and then stop saying, I ain't snitching on so and so and so. Now, if you see a strange car riding up and down your street, then guess what? Call the police. Now, don't get me wrong. I just told you, I don't like to call the police. I don't. But if you see something going on and you know it's strange, then do it. My neighbor, they dropped off a package at my neighbor's house. He sees on the camera 5 minutes later somebody come by and pick up the package. That is crazy, right? But they are doing that. They are doing that. And so you got to be aware of your surroundings. You got to, as much as I say I don't want to get the police involved in my situations, if somebody's riding down your street and you know that it looks suspicious, or if you see somebody deliver something and then you also see somebody come pick it up, get the license plate to the car and go ahead and call the police. We can start help. How we help is help police ourselves sometimes. But oftentimes we want to go on the old adage of snitches get stitches. And that's true. My 10-year-old my 10-year-old nephew, my niece went down and said, Daddy, so and so upstairs doing something. He came down. He said, snitches get stitches. We bust out laughing. How you know about that? Where you get that from? You ain't even in that environment. But he said it, and it was funny. But it was funny, but it's really not, because our community is the one that's been affected, because they are coming and they're robbing our communities. They are.
Yeah, I think you good points, Chris. Kianna.
Yeah, I think something like the laws, it's just kind of like the perfect storm in Atlanta, because our gun laws in Georgia are so weak. It's guns. Everybody got guns. They guns everywhere. So people, they breaking in cars looking for guns, because you can flip a coin and be like, okay, this red car, this white car got a gun, and I'm gonna flip a coin, and that's the car I'm going. Like, it's that. That's how bad it is. And what's going on is they're breaking the cars, they're taking the guns, and the guns are getting transported to New York, California, other places where the gun laws are a lot stricter. So, they're breaking in houses looking for guns. So they make a lot of money on the black market selling guns. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like the perfect storm, because it's opportunity for them to steal the guns and make some money, and it's not really much we can do about it. The other thing is with the cars, we have a port in Savannah, so they steal cars, get them to the port, they gone. It's just the opportunity is there, and unfortunately they making it happen. So it's the perfect storm with COVID and just kind of how our laws are set up in Georgia that create the opportunity for people who are less fortunate to go and commit these crimes.
Yeah, I want to hop into, I think the writing was on the wall, like you guys are saying, as far as COVID, and just even the political climate. Officers in Atlanta, they took a step back. They got the blue flu, you know what I mean? So I think APD is down 400 officers. There was a mass exodus after a series of events in Atlanta with Brooks and Mr. Howard taking out charges against those officers right away. And so APD is just really in a bad shape. I still don't think that they have a name police chief. They're still an interim chief, to my knowledge. And so they have a leadership issue as well. But my solution is buy Black. And I'm going to put this plug in for this book. It's called Our Black Year. And the author of this book and her family, they actually, for a whole year, they only shopped at Black stores and only bought products from African Americans and only used patron Black professionals for a whole year. And at the end of the book, it's an appendix about an experiment that was actually built from this year that they took off. Well, there's actually an experiment called the Empowerment Experiment, and it shows how our communities are impacted when we keep money in our communities. So it's something like $25 million or 25 million jobs are created when we buy Black, or could be created when we buy Black and keep money in our community, because Black business owners are more likely to hire Black employees. And so when we get into crime and having a felony on your record, it's hard to get a job, right? Even if it's not COVID, it's hard to get a job when you're a convicted felon. Well, Black people, Black business owners are more likely to hire people who have felonies, because, right, they might have one, or they might have someone in their family who has one. And so we understand that perspective. And so when we empower Black businesses, they can in turn empower our community by hiring us. And then that helps our children a lot. So as much as we can buy Black, that will be good for us. And I've challenged myself, all my professionals who I work with are Black. My CPA is Black, my dentist, my doctor. I got one doctor that's not Black, but that was an accident. But I don't mean it like that. There's some great white doctors. I don't mean it like that. But I mean, we have to empower our Black businesses and our Black professionals. And so that's something that we all can do. You know what I mean? I try to shop at Black beauty supply stores. I think the hardest one is Black markets, grocery stores. I think in Atlanta we had like one. I don't even know if it still exists. A lot of those stores are in neighborhoods that we might not necessarily want to patron. And so that one is a real challenge. But I think we can all challenge ourselves to buy more Black products and to patron Black business owners, and that will do a lot for our community.
Absolutely will. And Chris will tell you, Kianna, I've been doing that for years. I would tell him when he first started, I said, man, listen, I go to the dealership. If I'm buying a car, I want a Black salesman. It's not that I don't like white folks and I don't like a white salesman. I'm not saying that, but guess what? That white salesman, he'll get 10 or 15 people to come in and buy a car from him, while that one Black guy will get 2. So he's gonna get the masses coming in and buying cars from him and doing that. But this Black guy, he ain't gonna get that same opportunity. But another thing that we gotta also stop doing is we have to stop thinking that as Chris and our firm like to say, the white man's ice is colder. You know what I mean? What that means is, we both got ice, but his ice is cold. You know what I mean? And it's like, we got to stop in our mind thinking that, hey, I got to get this Jewish lawyer because, hey, Jewish lawyer, you're going to get me off. Okay, you're going to go pay that $50,000 that he told you to bring, and you're going to get the same result. Just being honest with you, you're going to get the same result. Now, I'm not saying that every lawyer is created equal. I'm not saying that. You have some sorry lawyers. You have some good lawyers. You have some sorry doctors. You have some good doctors. But we got to stop thinking that white is right. And then another thing that we got to stop doing is we got to stop going into our Black businesses wanting the discount. Oh, man, that's too much. And yet you take your raggedy behind over here to Foot Locker and pay $200 for some shoes, but you won't come pay me $150. Man, you got these for $150. You can get this to me for $110. But you going to Foot Locker and paying $200. But that's that we be in.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with all of that. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with saying, buy Black. There's nothing wrong with that. because that empowers us. I mean, our communities need that kind of support. And unfortunately, in the Black community, that's kind of how we roll. I think we need to break that trend and support each other in that regard. So, I mean, I think those are all good points that need to be said, need to be heard, and need to be lived out in our Black communities. And just so we switch topics, and we're all going to continue to talk and conversate in this. And another thing that's related to this, and why we brought this to the table this year, is taxes, investments, and things of that nature. And I know Gregory and Ms. Chennault was touching on this before we even got started. Is our tax laws and investing. In my day-to-day life, I'm a private banker with Wells Fargo, so I see money move, and I see where it moves and who has it, and how they invest it. So I wanted to have a topic on that. I wanted to have a topic on our new tax laws that are coming up, personal and business. I know Terrence, Chris, myself, and Kianna, we all have businesses on the side, LLCs or whatnot. So I wanted to have a conversation about, what's the best entity to create, and what are the tax liabilities when you create it, sole proprietor, partnership, LLC, or corporation, and what are the steps, what is the best, the way to set up your business for your tax liability, and what are some of the new rules that are going to come about. And I think that's a conversation that all of us can kind of touch on. But I wanted my guy, my main man, who's been saving me for years, and I know a lot of my friends have worked with Mr. Gregory, and he has saved us time and time again when it comes to taxes. So I wanted you to step in, sir, and kind of give us a run around, and then we can all coordinate and have conversation about taxes, investing, and things of that nature.
All right, I'm going to kind of subject this is in two. I'm going to go business and personal. Now, what I like to tell my business clients, if you're 1099 everything, you don't want a refund. You just want to pay and pay as little as possible. You just want, hey, listen, I made $70,000. Here's my expenses. Can my expenses match up so I get close to the $70,000 so I don't have anything? Because a lot of people, and this is something I'm starting to learn I'm learning as I go, and I tell people, hey, at the end of the year, especially if you're a business, you just want to make sure you have a minimum tax liability as small as possible. Because, if you get 1099, let's just say you get one for let's just use 75,000. Okay, well, what are your business expenses? Are you tracking? I like to have people, and I've been setting people up where I'll send them a blank template so they can do their monthly expenses. So, you get, how much did you pay? If you have a area in your house or a business that you own and you rent or whatever you do. So you can track everything that's going through there, because, now that as things expand and as, Trump has taken away a lot of stuff, but there was some stuff added. So as you're doing these things, you want to make sure you can maximize all the stuff that you have. So, hey, you're using your cell phone. Do you have two or do you have one? If you have one, do you have to highlight your information? No, but every month get a rolling tracker. Hey, how much did you use your cell phone? Do you have internet for your office? Do you have you bought software? There's a lot of things that people kind of forget. And then as I go through the list name, sometimes I'll get 2-3 bags of, plastic bag full of receipts, and they dump them on me. And you'd be like, hey, you might want to get a template or something. Let me give you a template and help you out. And then you're helping these people out also as they want to establish their business better, if they're an LLC, a corporation, or whatever. Because when you want to go get a bank loan, the first thing they're going to see, especially if a business and you want to use your business credit, not your personal credit, they're going to want to see, how did your business do? Do you have a business account set up? I was talking to some, recently, of course, I'm getting bombarded, but I'm trying to educate people, because people like, hey, I established a business for 4 or 5 years, but I didn't establish a business account. So I'm like, hey, listen, what you want to do, get yourself an EIN. Pay to get yourself a corporation. It's really not that expensive. If you have a problem, I'm sure we can work it out. I can help you get that, but get that stuff, because you want to make sure you're doing everything correct. I don't want people to have, and I'm seeing successful businesses, and I'm going to say it that way, just successful businesses where they do great business and they're terrible business people. like a doctor is a doctor. A doctor is not a doctor and an accountant. Like a lawyer is a lawyer, a mechanic's a mechanic. Hey, what is your business? My business is serving the people to do in there whatever I do. If I'm a accountant, a lawyer, anything, that's what I do. What about your business side? Oh, well, I think I pay some of my taxes, but I don't, and I'm trying to get that, or I'm going to catch up at the end of the year. And then when the end of the year comes, hey, I'm looking, wow, I owe like $20,000. Well, why? Did you not pay your quarterly taxes? No. Oh, do you decide you want to do yearly? Well, if you do yearly, yeah, that's what it's going to be. If you take it in, I tell people just to say you're in business is one thing, but to be a business owner, there's a lot of things that you have to do. So, as people embark, and now is a perfect example, like with COVID, it's a perfect example for people to do their businesses because, everybody, it's almost like like I said, it's a good and a bad. It's almost like a perfect playing field because, hey, everybody's at home. Everybody has a computer. Everybody has an idea. So, hey, I have an idea to do this with people at home, and I can utilize the information that I have to start a business. I can start a jewelry business. I can start, whatever kind of business you want. I like to have people be like, hey, write down a plan because so many people say, okay, I got a business. What is your business plan? What are you planning for your business to do? I know this is a little more than tax stuff, but I like to kind of explain this to people so we get a fair area. What is your plan for your business? I don't, okay, you want to be rich. Well, great. Everybody wants to be rich. Everybody wants to go in business and be rich. Nobody wants to go in business and be broke. That's not, you want the independence of your business so you can, and I tell this to people and I definitely tell it to my children and I tell the other people, I can't give a job to my son, but I can give a business to my son. So as long, it's something that you can give, and this is something, and I hate to say this, but this is something that we were not really taught to do. Our dinner conversations was, you get a job, you work 30 years, you bust your hump, you're going to retire and go off, and you'll be great. Then all of a sudden, things started changing, and you're like, hey, I like working, but I like working for myself. I like to do something for myself. And I think what I'm able to do for myself, I'm able to do better than just working for somebody. Of course, that comes with other responsibilities, but that's my spiel on that.
Definitely. Hey, Greg, I want to ask a question. I'm glad you kind of brought up the topic
Okay.
of the business plan and things of that nature, because I mean that helps you in your year to year, day to day of knowing what to expect for as your expenses and what are you going to be paying and what whether that's going to be a salary or utilities or whatever. So you got to kind of have a business plan so you'll prepare. What is it that you're going to be writing off because this is the nature of my business.
Correct.
And so that's a good topic for us.
And that's
But I
correct.
also wanted, yeah, I also ask you a question just so the masses know, because I deal with this a lot at banking, and people always come in and ask me, what kind of business should I set up? Because there's a difference in how the taxes work depending on what kind of business you have, and we call something what they have in finance is flow through. So if you could explain flow through, because if you have a sole prop or LLC, there's a flow through of business losses that you can put on your personal taxes. Can't do it with a corporation. You can't do that with other entities. So if we could explain that as well, because I think that's an important part.
We're going to go to sole proprietorship in the LLC now. And the lawyers can jump in because I'm not a lawyer. So I'm going to just go from what exactly I know. And then y'all can jump and say, hey, Greg, that's a little wrong. With a sole proprietorship doing a business, you are the sole proprietor, but you are also the sole liability holder. So if anything happens, they can come after you personally. I know with some LLCs, they still can, but you do have that umbrella of LLC, so they can only go after the entity of the business and not you personally. This is why I like to tell people to establish EIN numbers and stuff like that. So, hey, if something happens, because a lot of big corporations do the same thing. Hey, GM, oh, we're losing money. We're doing something. You know what? We're going to go bankrupt. What are you going to come back as? I'm gonna come back as another GM, but doing something else. And everybody, especially, and it's a little on topic with the stocks. Stockholders left holding the bag. They went bankrupt. Well, I have like $3,000 worth of stock. Well, now you basically have worthless stock. They come back, today they're this day, tomorrow they come up with something else. And it's happened to me with GM. I just happen to use GM, but, it's happening other time. But again, the things that you can write off, like I said, if you're doing your business and you structure it correctly, you can almost write off everything. But again, it's according how you do it, because I have a lot of customers that have a business here and still, they're kind of, I like to say, straddling the fence. They have a job and they might be doing something on the side. So they have a W-2. And then you look at them and be like, okay, well, how much business have you really done? Because and of course, I get where, well, I drove 100,000 miles. Did you drive 100,000 business miles? Or did you drive 100,000 personal miles that you're trying to write off for your business? And, and I try to tell them that because, at the end of the day, like I tell people, you can almost do exactly what I'll do what you ask me to do, but I'm going to warn you on certain steps. Now, I feel that some of the stuff I give besides just the tax help is the other help of being able to survive and thrive. I don't want someone to not, this is the information we have. I believe we can share because it will not just help our community, it'll help everybody. Our community has definitely been beaten down on for 400 years. And what Terrence said and Chris said and Kianna, all of that stuff, I driving while black, all kinds of stuff. Yes, it's happened to me. I've had where people have come to my house. Oh, you look a little too young to own a house. This is not now, but a couple of years ago when I first moved here, oh, you look young. Can I talk to your father? I'm like, no, my parents didn't live here. And what I end up doing when the police came, I saw them coming. I go outside my house, stay on my property, but go outside my house. So I don't even give them the chance to come inside the house because you're right. There's nothing they need to see here. But as far as going back, as far as business, now, if you are really doing your business, and when I mean really doing it, then you really need to have your set of books because eventually you want to cross yourself over to get business credit, and that's what they ask for. They might ask for, and Henry, you could jump in. When somebody comes for a business loan, you're asking for, hey, listen, let me see your business credit. Do you have a P&L statement? Do you have a trial balance? Do you have some type of AR? What do you have? And most people, especially if they don't know, they don't know. Hey, yeah. I got someone paying me, and I'm running an Uber service. Okay, yeah. Well, what's the information? Because Uber gives you nice information, and if you just kind of put it in a template, it'll work out great for you. Okay, hey, I had this many clients, I did this many drives, I got this amount of money coming in. This is my expenses. Clean. I want to get a couple more. I've got a couple of guys who have, they're actually doing car rental services. They started with Uber, now they're doing car rental services. So I kind of help them out with that stuff. So, that's, I believe, as far as for the business side, getting people together, that's how I feel it should be done.
Yeah, I mean, you touch on a good topic, and that a lot of people don't know. It's not like the old days when you can come into the bank and say, hey, I want a business loan, I want to start a business. And you sit down and you hand out your business plan, and they say, "Oh, this is a good plan. We want to invest in this. We want to help you build this business." It's not how it works anymore. I mean, the business credit is basically your personal credit when you're starting out. So if you have great personal credit, there's a better chance that you're going to get some business credit. You're going to have some business opportunities to get business credit. But even then, banks and institutions, they don't like lending to certain kind of companies. They don't like lending to companies who are startups. The first 2 years, it's very hard to get a business loan or a business line of credit. Credit cards are more prevalent in that regard. But yeah, starting out your business is going to be more of you, financing your own way, unless you have exceptional credit or you have cash, because cash talks. So you can secure your own way. So if you are starting a business out in that regard, definitely you'll have to plan accordingly because you can't really count on banks, and I say any banks to fund your business. Essentially, they want to know that you can make money so that you can pay back this loan or this line of credit that we're willing to give you. So I definitely think that's a topic that's important for people to know. And Greg, I also want to touch on, I know, in the business world, is there anything that you've seen that has changed when it relates to taxes from last year or the years previous? I know COVID has they've changed a lot.
I can touch on the COVID thing, and it's funny. I was actually doing some, and you saw me probably doing stuff in the background. I'm talking to customers. One of the things, and this is business and personal, when people ask you for your stimulus, because there's a credit that is associated with your stimulus. Some people got stimulus, some people didn't. I didn't get any stimulus. I don't know if there's credit is, for your amount of income, but if you did get stimulus, there's a certain credit you won't get. But if you didn't and you're supposed to get stimulus, and this is something that's new with the government, they will give you some of the credit back. So your taxes might go up a little more because you didn't get any stimulus money. Because I know a lot of people, when it first, it's better now, but when it first rolled out, it was terrible. I mean, it was just horrible the way, some people got it, some people didn't. Some people got $200, some people got $1,200. It's like, oh, well, if you got kids, and then, they tell you, okay, if you got kids, they didn't say to anything, hey, and your kids need to be under a certain age, like, they need to be 17 and under to get the full stimulus. If they're over that, you don't get that, and, just a whole lot of stuff. So that's one good thing that's one thing that's changed. Also, and this is, kind of either, business and personal, the earned income. Because I remember you had shot me a question about this, Henry, not to kind of change, but the earned income. What they're saying, since some people might have earned less this year, you can actually use your earned income from 2019 if you earned more money to get more credit. That is something that they're doing. So that is something that is a big thing. But as far as the business, a lot of people are taking, and this is still going with it, with the PPP stuff also. So as you do that, there's information you need to know like that, because there's some people who didn't get in the first round. So a lot of them might be getting it now. But what I tell people, oh, I got my first round of PPP and now I want my second round. So the first thing I usually ask as I'm advising them, I'm like, okay, first of all, did you use all the PPP? That's number one. Number two, knowing if you did use it, if you made less money, you will get PPP. If you made more money, they might not give you PPP, and it's on the small business, because nobody wants to read that. I just told like someone's going to get more money, and I'm like, no, you need to read that if you have to make 25% less this year to receive your PPP money. To receive your second PPP. Also, if you also receive PPP, you want to fill out the information. I'm sure you hear this a lot, Henry, for the PPP forgiveness. Please fill that information out, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, when's the deadline? And what I try to do is I help them out, but I want them to be educated. So I'm going to show them with LinkedIn's and everything. Is like, you need to do reading, because I that's one thing that I noticed that I found that quite surprising. There's a lot of business people out there, and I know they're busy doing their business, but they're not up on business stuff that are, just establishes or just helps out with businesses in whole, where they're not reading any of the laws or anything that has changed for them. And then they are saying they're being slighted or something else like that. And you're like, no, this stuff is published. You have to read this information.
One thing to touch on with the PPE and the SBA loans, we've seen an uptick in the criminal sector for our firm of people who are getting prosecuted. I can read a letter that a guy just sent me over the last 2 weeks, where he did a small business loan or a PPP loan. I don't know which one he actually did, but he was asking, hey, is this real? And what happened to him was, you got some slick talking folks out here, right?
Oh yes.
And they will tell you, hey, now listen, I'm sorry about this, but I plugged up my charger, and if I go off, I'm going to try to log on from my phone, but I'm going to try to make it real quick. But essentially, somebody told him, hey, I will help you get this loan if you give me $25,000 of the money, or you give me a certain percentage of the money. And he did it. And now he has a letter saying that he has to be in federal court on like next week to show what happened with the money. You know, everybody knows about the people who are on Love and Hip Hop or some of those other shows who went out and bought these different things. Listen, if it's supposed to be for your employees and
Right.
you buy you a Bentley, that's a problem.
Right.
Or, you have to show these people where this money is going. They're not just giving you free money.
No,
but there is uptick in that.
Yes, and Terrence, you're correct. And there's a lot of people, and what he probably did, he did a PPP. Now, if you do an EIDL, it's a little different, but PPP, and the first PPP was very specific what you could do. You had to pay employees, you had to do your rent, and you could pay for utilities. That was it, the first one. Now, this new PPP is a little more flexible. You can pay your car note and stuff like that. But what people thought, this is free money. It's not free money.
No.
It's money for your business to survive. And again, I know people who have done the same thing and said, hey, I can help you out with your PPP or your EIDL. You give me a portion of it. You know, there's a lot of agencies that are doing that. They're not doing any more than what you can possibly do, but that's some of the stuff they're doing. And they're almost, it's almost like a loan fee or a brokerage fee that they're charging. And then unfortunately,
when you pull that money out, though, when you pull that $25,000 out immediately, and you giving it, you they like I said, they slick talking now. They're no, you ain't got to give me no check. No, I want my cash.
Yeah, of course, because you know what can't you cash? What can't you really track? It's cash.
You can't track that cash.
And I feel, but again, there's a lot of people who prey on other people with stuff like that. You've got to, and like I said, I know with the PPP is very, the way they do it is very much methodically out, at least for the first PPP, or certain things you can do. Now, I won't say what he could have did. There could have been something he could have did to get himself out of it, but that's another topic.
Yeah. I mean, it's changed a lot on the second round to where you can use operating expenses and things of that nature. So it basically opening up the clouds to where you can basically write pretty much everything off related to your business. And I mean, that essentially that could be a car. If you're saying, hey, I'm using this car to run my business, that's operating expenses. So the second round is definitely, they definitely broaden the horizon of what you can use on those funds. But to bring it back, and it was something that I wanted to ask you about, as far as with taxes and business and what we're speaking on. Now, you have this 1099, as you mentioned, a person made $75,000 and they make good money, or they make more, but now they want to go out and buy this home that's $300,000. They can afford it, but if you've written off so much on your taxes, then now the banks are looking at it like, okay, you only make $35,000 a year. So can you explain to the people the issue with writing off too much? Because I've dealt with this myself. So
and what you have to have, and I like to say, you have to have a heart to heart with the person and be like, listen, this comes into the planning stage. What do you plan on doing with yourself and your business in a couple of years? If you say, hey, listen, I'm going to be a 1099, self-employed. I'm thinking about possibly eventually down the road getting a house or doing something. And you're like, okay, listen, you're going to have to show where you made some profit and you're going to pay taxes. The one thing I like to tell some of the people to get yourself used to it, you can do a quarterly tax thing where you can quarterly pay taxes. Think about what you make, and then it still be 1099, and you could quarterly pay $2,000 to $3,000 in taxes or something like that. So at the end of the year, you make $75,000, and you made, if you do quarterly, you pay $8,000 worth of taxes. So now you're like, okay, now I've actually paid into it, even though I'm 1099. I've actually paid into it, so I have $8,000 of federal taxes that I know I can write off. That's one way. Or another way is, hey, I know I'm making all this money as a 1099, and or some people do, hey, I like a little extra money, so I'm going to change my tax code. I'm going to make myself, usually I'm a gentleman with 2 or 3 children, with 2 children, so I'm going to be like, I'm going to put 2. Money's a little tight, so I'm going to change it to 9. It looks great. This is what I tell people. It looks great. You have done, and I like to explain this to people, and they get very upset, but I explain it. You've already got your tax refund every paycheck. They're like, what do you mean? Every paycheck, since you're not paying taxes, you get your refund. So at the end of the year, you're going to just pay taxes. And I mean, I try to tell them the truth. I mean, you go to H&R Block or somebody, I'm going to tell you the truth. I want you, because so many times we've been told tales, stories, lies, bamboozled. And at the end, we get upset and we want to blame everybody else when you have to look at yourself and be like, hey, listen, you knew when you changed your taxes, when you were paying taxes, every 2 weeks you were getting $2,500. Now you're getting $3,495, right? Where that extra $900 something was your taxes you was paying. Now you're not paying your taxes. So you got it. The best thing, and I try to tell this to people, the best scenario for you to have as taxes as a individual or a business is at the end of the year, you break even or owe them a little something. Because then you got, there was some years I'm paying $14,000, $15,000 of federal tax. I was not getting a $14,000, $15,000 tax return. I was getting maybe a third of it, if at best. So you're looking like, wow. So I paid $15,000 into the system, and I'm only getting $4,000 to $5,000, which they're arguing with me to even get. So why am I going to do that system? Let's change the whole system. Let me do my system. I'm 1099 or doing whatever I'm doing. At the end of the year, say I even owe them $2,000. Okay, fine. I give you your $2,000. Well, wow. Last year I paid $14,000 and I got 5, so I lost 9. This year I'm giving them $2,000, so I'm up $7,000. That's a win-win every day. And that's one thing I try to train people as businesses or something going on. That's what you want. If you got to pay, give them their little $2,000. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
You have to look at and people don't look at like I said, you have to look at the long term or the big plan at the end. What is the plan at the end?
So, Greg, I want to touch on this, and that's great information. And like I said, a lot of people come to the bank, and I'd be like, "You're not finna get this home because you're writing off too much." But on another side of that, and kind of move the conversation because this is all related, as far as when it comes to taxes and what you pay, what comes out of your check. If you're a business owner, you have a 1099, and you're not paying no federal, you're not paying no state, no Medicaid's not coming out, or no Social Security. So one of the things that you're risking is not having that Social Security when you retire.
That is
so
correct.
A lot of people need to, and I speak towards this, and a lot of people don't know this, but there is a way for you as a business owner to pay into your Social Security so that you can prove to the government that you're making money, you're paying your Social Security. So when you do retire, you will have that, what we call an investment, a bucket. You try to have your 401k, you try to have your money saved up, and you try to have your Social Security. So, but if for years, if you never pay Social Security, it's not going to be there for you when you retire. So speak on that for them. Like if you are 1099 and you're not paying your Social Security.
If you are a 1099, there's ways to set yourself up where if you want to, you can 1099 and then take out the stuff that you would figure out for a W-2. Hey, right to the state, here's your state money. Right to federal, okay, here's you could do your quarterly, here's my federal quarterly taxes. And then you could even write, do the Social Security. Here's my Social Security thing. But another thing, and Henry, this is of course going to touch into investment. You could do that, but then you also, like I tell some people, you can also create your own 401. You can go get your IRA account. You can get something, and you can put a certain amount away, and know that, hey, I have this money because people. When Social Security was set up, it was never set up to support people. It was set up the way it was set up and the way it is now is it's terrible that people say that they're not going to have money for Social Security. But one, it was set up for you, at the time when you retired at 65 or whatever, the government said you're going to live maybe, live not to be morbid, 2 or 3 years, and then you're gone. So, all the money, you're not going to take out any more money than you put in. Unfortunately, people are now living longer, so some are taking out more than they put in, or when they put in, it is just that, and a lot of people have to realize it's there, but it's not there for your full support. And I've talked to my parents about this. This is as they say, this is what I believe is the tough love conversation. When you tell people, oh, well, I'm paying to the full, and you're looking like, I understand that, but you also need to kind of invest in yourself, do a 401k or do something, because if you're making $50,000-$60,000 a year and you're not doing any kind of investment, well, when you get to the point where you're no longer working, you're used to having $50,000-$60,000 a year. Okay, now what are you going to do when you get to that point where you're not working and you get if you get your Social Security, it's $1,800 a month. There's a big gap there. How are you going to fulfill that gap unless you go out and work part-time and do something? There's something that you need to, as and I'm teaching this to my children and I'm teaching everybody. You need to be able to put some money away. You don't have to, and Henry, you know this because you kind of help me when I set up my stuff. Hey, you need to put some money away. It's going to grow. Just leave. That's the money. Like you said, you don't even look at it. It's just you grow. You don't even look at that. You do something else. It's there. You have it. Wonderful. What you want to do also, because we all have the money, especially now. Think about it. If you're making the same amount of money you was making when you were going to before COVID, okay? How many people are traveling? I ain't doing too much traveling. How many people are doing that? I'm not doing that. But if the money is still coming in like you were, it's like, oh, now's the time. This is the time now you could step up and start handling other things. Like, well, maybe I could do some investment, or maybe I can pay some of this stuff because I have this money that I'm not, this money, I'm not going out to lunch. Yeah. I'm not going to the clubs. Yeah. I'm not, all the things that you was doing, it's a bunch of money that you kind of look at, you be like, wow. Yeah. All this money I was spending on craziness that, when I was out, because I used to do a lot of travel because, I've been here, but before I used to travel maybe, oh my God, last 2 years ago, I was traveling probably every week. And I would look at my expenses and I look now and I'm like, man, I'm not really traveling. I don't do that much, but wow, I got this money still here. Yep. Use it for something. Use it because, like I said, you can use it or it's going to be used. Like I tell people, if you put $100 under your mattress, 6 months from now, it's only going to be $100. It can't be nothing else. But if you invest, even if you get 1-2%, it's got to be a little more. Then, the way that everything is going on now, as far as people investing themselves and doing stuff like that, we are kind of a new generation where we can actually go out there and do things and be part of it. Even though they try to stop us, we can still be part of a new generation of doing wonderful things. Exactly.
And what you speak towards, man, is that in last March, when all of this kind of, came about, Kianna and Chris all can tell you, first thing I said was start investing in stocks. Yeah. I mean, that was the first thing that I told everyone. When everything fell off, I said, man, go buy this, and go buy this. Some people listen, some people didn't listen. But that's the first thing that I told all of my friends, all of my people, invest, because at the end of the day, as you stated, your money sitting there is not doing anything. And I always tell my clients, if your money's not growing, then you're actually losing money, because inflation is that $100 that you had last year can't buy the same thing that it bought this year. So you should always have your money working and growing in a certain way. The environment that we're in right now, savings accounts are not paying you anything. It's 0.01% at Wells Fargo. I mean, it's 0.02%. I don't care if you got $1 million in the bank. Right. You need to have your money working in a way to where it's keeping pace with inflation. It's keeping pace with what's going on, because as we all know, the cost of living is going up in Atlanta, cost of living going up all over the world, and we need to have those vehicles ready. And I want to touch on investment for a moment as we're talking, because we've already kind of got into it. And I spoke to it in the beginning where we're talking about buckets. And
Right.
as you stated, Social Security shouldn't be your main bucket. It should be a part of your bucket. And it should be a part. 401k should be a part of your bucket. The savings account should be a part of your bucket. And then one thing that we in our Black community, one, racism, and how it was life insurance.
Right.
And that's no longer the case. But that should be the number one, the first thing that we as a community should invest in having life insurance. That's how you pass along a legacy. You
Right.
may die with zero in your bank account, but if you have life insurance, you can pass on a legacy to your children, and possibly to your children, depending on how much life insurance you have, and the earlier you get it, the better. So in that regard, if you listen to me listen to us on Facebook one night, the first thing I tell you, go get you some life insurance.
Yeah,
One, to
definitely.
protect your family, protect if something happens. And a lot of people think you can only just get, life insurance when you die. No, if you lose a limb, if you go blind, if any critical thing happen, you have resources. You can tap into your life insurance
Yes.
policy at that point. And if you get permanent life insurance, it grows just like an investment. It has cash value beside it. And the one good thing about that cash value, if you take it, it's tax free.
Yep.
That's one of the only one products that you can do is tax free if you take it. So I mean, in that regard, and I know Gregory and Kianna, we were talking about stocks and things of that nature. But Greg also talked on the flip side of that of how that is taxed. You have a tax advantage when you invest in stocks and dividends. So can we talk about that a little bit as well?
The big advantage I feel on that is if there's some people, and I have a couple of my friends, they want to do day trading. If you can stand it, it's a good thing. I don't do it because what you're going to do, if you're making a lot of money, you're going to get capital gain and you're going to get taxed that capital gain. If you reinvest it or something like that, you're good. As long as you keep on reinvesting it, you're good. But once you pull it out, I put my money, I pull it out, capital gain, they're gonna get you. It's almost like when you do houses or something like that. Hey, you sell it, you get it at 100, you sell it at 150. Oh, your capital gains is $50,000. You got to pay tax on it. So
I mean, and even with that, all of that, it's and it also depends on how long you keep that investment. If you keep it longer than a year, then it's capital gains. But if you keep it less than a year, you sell that investment, then it's taxed as ordinary income. Yeah. So we need to know that component as well, because holding on to investment, time is key when it comes to that as well.
Right.
And you touched on it with property. If you have an investment property and you haven't lived in that investment property at least 2 or 5 years, then they're going to tax you differently as if you lived there 2 years within that 5-year span. That's what they kind of look at.
Right.
And depending on how much you sell it for, whether it be capital gains or ordinary tax.
Right.
So,
and I know also if you rented that property, and there's certain things, because for a while, if you have property, you rent it and stuff like that. One, you do get the tax, you do get a tax break because you get to write off that interest, the property tax and stuff like that. That is something you get to do. That is something, and as long as everything works out well, that's fine. I would not tell any, renting is. I would put this way: if you have rental property, good. It's not for the faint of heart. If you have great renters, it's a wonderful thing. If you have bad renters, it's a horrible thing.
I remember when I was at Chase, we were talking about that when we were setting up the property you got out of Georgia. So yeah, definitely. I mean, it's good, but it can be tough as well when it comes to income.
Because I know what a lot of people. Oh, I rent the Section 8 and stuff like that. Yeah, you get the money, but you also you have some issues. If it all works out good, it's great. I mean, all like we'll say, even with investments can be the greatest thing if you're making. If you're not making, I had a conversation earlier with my daughter. What me and her was going on, we was talking about Robinhood, and all the stuff with the, the GameStop and this person did this, and how now anytime the government kind of starts looking at things and getting in things, they want to do something that's just not going to be good for everybody. What they want to do is kind of get their hooks into you, so they be like, okay, whatever you gain or loss, I got to make sure we get our money. As long as I get my tax money, it's fine. And like I was explaining to my daughter, because she was, very upset about, I guess there was a gentleman who had, he played options, didn't know anything about it, found out that he owed a lot of money. So he, unfortunately took his life. When it's one, what went on with GameStop, at least what I think, and I've kind of seen with GameStop is just a broker that is backed by hedge funds. Hedge funds has been doing exactly what the Reddit has done to them forever. There's certain things, and we know that there's certain clients that get a new stock comes out. Okay, well, they might get it at the IPO price. When it gets to us, like if you was in DoorDash, somebody could have got DoorDash with the IPO price. It got to us, DoorDash is $120 a share.
Oh yeah, they call those institutional investors.
Correct.
AKA people with a lot of money.
Right. And you're correct. So the institutional investors get the fare. And those are usually people who are hedge fund managers. So they are. I mean, that's the business they're in. It's funny. I watch a lot of Box in the morning. And I have to laugh at some of these guys, because when you listen to them, it's almost like you guys really think you know something that you don't know. And I would respect you more if I said, hey, there's a lot of trends in here. We're not really familiar with these trends, because as they say, a lot of people who are now home have more time to do research. And what a lot of people are starting to find out, and I'm finding out, at least myself, I know a lot more than these people, because I'm doing my research. These people don't do research, and I'm sure all of us have been approached or called by a broker who is trying to throw some stock at us. Oh, I see this 18 months is trending, and he's sitting there like 18 months. Wow. And then when you turn around and give them a stock, like I happen to remember I got called by a broker, and they really had nothing to do with cannabis stock. So I was talking about cannabis stock. Well, that's not a good market. It's up and down. I said, why would you say that it's not a good market? Is it not a good market because you don't know about it, or it's not a good market because you don't feel it's a good market? I was asking him to explain to me, and he really couldn't explain. I said, okay, it's not a good market because that's not what your firm is trying to peddle to us. So you're not, certain hedge funds, I keep on calling it hedge funds, it's not, it's just hedge funds. There's certain things that they look at. And I believe, and you're right, research is necessary. I believe everybody should at least research and look at what's going on within the world. Like right now, EVs, anything green energy, anything EVs, anything solar, because that's where we're going.
Yep.
It's funny, not to stray off the conversation, but I was looking at the Texas governor, and if you thought about what he first said about Houston, was just, we're having all these issues because of the Green New Deal. And you're sitting there like, do you know people are actually believing there's a problem with the Green New Deal? And then you have to think about yourself. You'd be like, there is no Green New Deal. They talked about it. There's no law that's been signed. So, because of wind and solar, we're having issues. One of the other gentlemen came in and said, wind and solar is only 10% of what Texas does. No. The reason Texas is having it, because Texas decided they want to do their stuff independently from everybody else. You've got the research and knowing to cut through all the crap. You've got to have some knowledge of it. Yeah. Once you have knowledge, then knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've seen. Any type of knowledge, anything that you want to do, back to business or personal, have some knowledge about what you want to do. Because if you're unknowledgeable, you will be, kind of like what Karen said. The gentleman who did the PPP, he could have learned that, hey, I didn't have to go to an agent and give him 25%. I could have did this myself. But he was unknowledgeable. And I feel a lot of stuff, especially our community, we have been starved of knowledge. So a lot of things we don't know about because we won't take the time to read it. And right now, listen, you're stuck at home with COVID. Open up a book. Read something on the internet. Get some knowledge, because knowledge is truly power.
Yeah, and scrub your knowledge. I have clients come in who are millionaires, and they say some of the most bizarre stuff in the world to me, and I'd be like, "Who are you listening to?" I mean, I've had clients, man, when on January 20th, when Biden was inaugurated, pull all of their money out of the account because they thought all the banks are gonna fold over. I mean, I had people with millions of dollars come in and get checks, because they were so scared from what they were listening to and reading. So you definitely need to scrub your knowledge, and watch who you're listening to. I think it all goes back to having that foresight, that insight to know what you're hearing, whether it makes sense or not. And yeah. So
and that's a lot of things. People don't, you can't go on, I like to say, bandwagon and stuff. If something, don't be afraid. And a lot of times, this is, our community, do not be afraid to challenge something. If you don't know, challenge it. Ask the questions about it. Do something. Do a little research on your own. Don't just take it as the gospel and run with it. And that's what I try to tell people. Listen, don't, if I don't know, I will get back to you. I will try to get the knowledge I need to get back to you about it, because, that's what we do. And as a community, that's how we learn. When you interact with people, that's how you learn more things and gain more knowledge about what you want to do and how you should do and be more successful.
Exactly. And I think everything that we brought to the table today kind of it lends to that, or it's in that direction. So I know we got like 4 minutes left. I thank each and every one of you all for joining me, and I want to give everyone a final word. What is it that one tagline of I know why you're here, but what do you want the people to know? That one thing. I appreciate each and every one of you all for being here, and I hope those who will be listening now and those who will be looking at it later that you learn some knowledge that can help us move forward, move the culture forward. But Chris, Kianna, Terrence, Gregory, if you all got one word, just go ahead and give us the tidbit of what it is. Thank you all for joining us.
Ladies first, Kianna, please.
Thank you. I want to add briefly to the investment conversation, just because I don't want us to forget our children, and we can really set our children up for their future. And so if you Google UTMA, UTMA, those are accounts, custodial accounts that we can buy for our children, investment accounts, so we can put money in them and they'll grow. And when they're 18, the money becomes theirs. So it becomes theirs. So they can use the money for college. They can buy a home. They can start a business. And so let's put our children in a better financial position than what we were when we were 18. So I wanted to say that. But I also just want to reiterate the importance of property ownership and Fourth Amendment rights. And again, buying Black, because these issues are totally interrelated. People who have access to resources and money are not policed the same, and we know that to be true. And so I think if we come back to what can we do as individuals, we can educate ourselves, as we've been saying, and also improve our financial situation. And I just really think everything comes back to money, in this country, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Can't forget the kids. Just not what you posted, but 529s. That's sponsored by the state. That as well helps with education and spending as well for the future. Chris, you're up next, buddy. You gotta come off mute. There you go.
Yeah, to go back to the conversation earlier about premises liability, just for everyone to kind of be aware of their surroundings, where they are, and if something happens to you or a loved one at a venue, at an apartment complex, that they may be liable for damages if someone is injured or killed. Just to kind of be aware of that, and just kind of with the crime in the city, it's not really. There are many different causes of it. It's kind of hard to say how can we stop the crime. Is so many different elements that is causing it right now. But one thing I would like to see would be like a change in our culture with promoting violence. Like last week, one of my favorite rappers almost was murdered here in Atlanta, Saha the Prince, and it's crazy. He doesn't even know, where it came from. He hadn't been in the streets in like 10 years. But, we got to stop glorifying violence. If we could do that, in the music, what have you, if we can stop glorifying violence, I think that'll be a good step to kind of prevent, all the violence we're seeing in the streets right now.
Yeah, man, I think that's a topic that me and you we talk about a lot together. And we don't, back in the day, they say what happened to the good fun music, the good fun rap.
Yeah, man,
you don't hear that as much anymore.
It's over with, man. We got to stay out the way now, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chris. Terrence, what you got for us?
Man, just everything that everybody else said. I just want everybody to be aware of their rights. Hopefully we did a good job trying to tell you what you can and can't do. We tried to make it plain. I try to walk it how I talk it. I try to tell people the same way, not in a stuffy manner. All lawyers not stuffy. I want you to know that you have rights. And so with that, use what we've said today to try to help you, if you're in a situation with a law enforcement officer. Same token with the taxes, and the same token with the premise liability. Just know your rights. Hopefully, you can use whatever you heard today to benefit you in the future. And if you still have questions, you can always reach us. You can reach Chris and I at the Wade Bradley firm, Wade Bradley Campbell firm. I'm sorry about that. You can reach us at the Wade Bradley Campbell firm, and don't hesitate to reach out. And if you have more questions outside of this 2-hour window, to contact, Brother Digsby on taxes or on investments, or to contact Kianna, on the things that she's doing right now, and on knowing your rights. And so I hope that we've said something that can benefit you, and that's all I'm asking.
Definitely, man. Appreciate you always joining in and giving knowledge to the people. And as you stated, I hope something help today that can move along. Gregory, as everyone's information, we will post as well as an email and contact. If you all can send that to me, I can get it out to the people. But Gregory, what you got for us to close, man?
All right, to close, I want to thank you for doing this, because this is something that's needed. I believe we need to kind of the stuff we talked about as far as the taxes and everything, we need to invest in ourselves. We need to understand that now is the time for us to kind of get the wonderful things that we can do, because there's wonderful things that we can do as a people, just as anything. We need to, also share the knowledge. There's one thing I say, and it's funny. I talk about like crab in the barrel syndrome. Why would you not want everybody that you're associated to be successful? What is the problem with having us be successful? And that's been something that's always been there, because we need to make sure that, hey, everybody is successful. Because if you have successful people, you surround yourself with successful people, people who like themselves, people who want to empower themselves to do something and spread it out to the community, not just your kids, but everybody's kids, to the village like we used to do. Everybody come together and enjoy. That's all I have to say. I'm gonna post my email address up there, so if anybody has any questions, they can get right back to me. And I'm kind of good on this, so please, anything that anybody wants, please reach out to me. I'm quite accessible. I don't, I don't get mad at people be like, oh, you keep bothering me. No, because there's knowledge. We need to step up for our community. So we can hold ourselves, and our children can look up to us. That's something we need to do for ourselves.
Definitely. Thank you, man. Like as I stated, we do this. We try to do this twice a year, just to bring information to the masses. We always throw a little different topic in there. I thought it was good for us to bring in the topic this year, and I thank you, Greg, for being a part of this, man, and giving us that advice. Thank all of you all for watching. Hopefully, like I stated, there was some knowledge given today. We will put up everyone's information. Kianna Chennault, as she stated earlier, www.gcmilk.com is where you can find her and reach out to see her website and reach out to her. Chris Campbell, Terrence, and Wade, you can dwbcfirm.com. Wade Bradley Campbell, some of the best defense attorneys you can find in the country. I'm gonna call it in the country you can find. And then we can reach Gregory at digsby@hotmail.com. And we at Park Avenue, we thank you as well. Myself, Pastor Dart, for working behind the scenes, Elliot for working behind the scenes. You can always find us at www.parkavbaptist.com. And as I stated, we thank you all for joining us, and we'll be back sometime later this year, bringing more topics to the people to push forward the culture.